Lishana Tova. I want to tell you, you are not the same person you were a month ago. Literally, our skin cells replace themselves about once a month, red blood cells every 3 to 4 months, and even the cells of organs like the brain and the heart, which scientists once thought were completed at the end of gestation, we now know are also capable of growth and change, albeit much more slowly and less frequently. And if you want to switch from the lens of biology to the lens of physics and talk about yourself not on the cellular level, but the atomic level, you are not the same person you were a moment ago. Since I started speaking to you, electrons have shifted their valences throughout your body a myriad of times. So that means you are capable of change. Today we celebrate the creation of the world, but not just the anniversary of the creation that we read in the beginning of the Torah. We celebrate creation and its ability to renew itself daily. Please open the books to page 166 with me. When we sing through Rosh Hashanah Musaf, it's split into 3 sections, and each section is dedicated to a theme of the holiday: kingship, the coronation of our King in heaven, or our sovereign in heaven if you prefer; memory; and shofarot, the sound which will awaken us to salvation. And in between each section, we blow the shofar, and then we sing the prayer that's written in red, Hayom Harat Olam. Let's read it. I'll read it to you in the English. It's the black paragraph above those red words. Today the world stands at birth. Today all creation is called to judgment, whether as your children or as your servants. If as your children, be compassionate with us, as a parent is compassionate with children. If as your servants, we look to you expectantly, waiting for you to be gracious to us, and as a day emerges from night, bring forth a favorable judgment on your behalf, awe-inspiring and holy one. 3 times during Musaf, we affirm the creation of the world, and I'm interested in the reference to servants, because in biblical times, there was a concept called Jubilee, Yovel in Hebrew. Every 50th year, slaves went free. And what happened was this. Sometimes people incurred a debt that they could not pay back, and they had the option then to sell themselves into indentured servitude. But it was not a permanent state. And every 50th year, when they blew the shofar at the end of Yom Kippur, the slaves would go free. Now we know from our 41 years of wandering in the desert that going from slavery to liberty is a tremendous but not so easy task. And the Gemara notes this. It continues the story of the slaves going free on Yovel, and it says they didn't instantaneously go home on Yom Kippur. Starting on Rosh Hashanah, they would leave the house of their master and they would gather for feasting and drinking and wear crowns upon their heads. And then at the end of Yom Kippur, they would go home free. And the reason that they would feast and drink and wear crowns is that when you're enslaved, it's hard to remember that you are a precious human being capable of much. And they would go through this 10-day ritual of bringing themselves back into a state of being a free person. Is that not true of us during the 10 days of awe? Do we not sometimes feel shackled to our flaws? Do we sometimes find ourselves enslaved to the things that we seem to do wrong over and over again? Yet just like the slaves going free at the end of the 10 days, we too can free ourselves. Rav Kook, he was a 19th century mystical rabbi, the first chief rabbi of Israel for the Ashkenazi Jews. He said the following: "The sacred must be built on the foundation of the profane. The profane is the matter of the sacred, and the sacred is its form. The more powerful the matter, the more significant the form." Let's break that down a bit. The sacred is the foundation of the profane. Profane, mundane matter, that is all we are. For example, in this world, grape juice is just grape juice. But if we pour it into a silver cup on Friday night, if we bless it, and if we savor its sweet taste and feel true gratitude for our ability to drink it, now it's become sacred. And so too with us. We are but profane matter, day-to-day dust. But during these 10 days, we can go through the form of sanctification. We can search deep inside of our hearts and find the determination to make changes that we really want to make. Rav Kook also teaches that the more powerful the matter, meaning the more mundane and everyday you are, perhaps even the more base, all true is that you become a more significant form of holiness. Those of us who are more distanced from God, when we accomplish our changes and transformations, it's all the more impressive. And I think that's why at the Christmas season we hear a Christmas carol over and over again, right? We love this story of Ebenezer Scrooge being able to transform himself. And it turns out we have a similar story in our folklore. I was doing some research for a class that I'll be teaching in our religious school, in our learning center, about Jewish storytelling. Once there was a miser, terribly wealthy and terribly cold. But there was one thing, one mitzvah that he would always obey, and that was to be a moil. For some reason, it spoke to him, and no matter how poor the family, no matter how distant the home, when he heard that a baby boy needed to be welcomed into the covenant, he would go. One day, a very grand carriage pulled up at his door, and he was told, "Your services are needed." He carefully locked away all of his treasures as he got ready to leave his home, and he slipped the iron key into his pocket for safekeeping. He was very attracted to the opulence of this carriage, and he started to have all sorts of fancies about where he was going. But he very quickly became afraid, because he started to notice that the wheels of the carriage made no sound on the pavement, that the horses threw no shadow, and that a heavy mist was falling over the land. When he finally arrived at his destination, it was a magnificent palace, and the servant who led him into the house told him to wait there. But of course, the beauty of the palace tempted him, and he started to wander through the rooms much further than a polite guest should wander. He opened the door of one room to find a beautiful young woman sitting in a chair. And it turned out that she was the mother of the new baby boy who needed to have his Brit Milah. And she said, "You've come to a terrible place. This is the house of the demon king. He captured me many years ago due to my greed for beautiful things. But you still have hope. Refuse to eat anything that he puts before you at the feast, and under no circumstances should you accept a gift for your services from him, no matter how beautiful." At that moment, his host, the king of all demons, found him and led him in to lead the shacharit service and to go through the surgery of the Brit Milah. And afterwards, he turned to the miser and he showed him the most beautifully laid table and said, "Eat, drink, celebrate with us." The miser said he had a stomachache. "Surely," said the demon king, "you must take some trinket home with you, as a thank you for coming this far, far way." And then he showed him a room full of glittering jewels and silver and gold. He said, "Choose what you want." But the miser remained strong. Somehow he found the strength to change. And he said no. And then the demon king threw something at his feet made of iron, and when the miser picked it up, it was the key that he had put in his pocket. Before he left, he had locked up all his treasures so none of them should go missing while he was gone. And the demon king said, "This was an inexpensive lesson for you, and you have stood the test well. Go home, take that key, and use it in good purpose." And that is just what the miser did. He went home, and he became the most generous man ever. And we love this kind of a story, don't we? Someone who is capable of instant change. The trouble is that for most of us, it's a process. Perhaps if a demon king came knocking at our door, we could find the strength to do it instantaneously. But the majority of us, we struggle day to day, month to month, year to year. And the Talmud tells a more realistic story of one of the most vile men becoming something noble. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, Reish Lakish. He was known for being a gladiator, sated by the blood of others. He was also known for being a thief. One day, he came across the River Jordan and saw someone beautiful bathing in the waters. It turns out it was Rabbi Yochanan, who not only was one of our greatest sages in the Talmud, but one of the most beautiful. Now, Reish Lakish mistook Rabbi Yochanan for a woman because of his great beauty, and to show to you what a beastly man he was, he attacked Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan, being a man, was strong enough to throw off the attack. And he turned to Reish Lakish in that moment, and he said, "Your strength would be better put towards studying the law. Come to the Beit Midrash with me. Come and learn Torah." So Reish Lakish did. Now, Rabbi Yochanan started out as his teacher, Aleph, Bet, Gimel. But Reish Lakish did apply himself to the material, and slowly over the course of time, his soul was transformed, and he and Rabbi Yochanan, the arguments that existed between them for the sake of heaven, echo centuries later, and we still cull wisdom from that which Reish Lakish has to teach us. Even the worst human beings are redeemable. There's a scientist, Dr. Dan Reisel. He lives in England, and he is very interested in just this kind of a thing. Can we redeem the most hardened criminals? I told you earlier that scientists originally believed that the brain was incapable of change after birth. It turns out your amygdala, the center of many emotions, including empathy, is capable of growth and change, although very gradual. And so Dr. Reisel is studying psychopaths. He is with the most hardened criminals in the London prisons, and they've been diagnosed as people that can feel no empathy for their victims. And while it's true that this kind of personality comes to us through nurturing, through very dysfunctional and abusive childhoods, he's discovered that psychopaths have smaller and less active amygdalas. And he's looking for ways to stimulate that part of the brain, help it grow, and help them do tshuva and rejoin in humanity. So surely, if the worst of human beings are capable of this kind of change, then everyone in this room is capable of that kind of change. In a few moments, we will pray the Musaf service. 3 times we will say, Hayom Harat Olam, today is the birthday of the world, and we will affirm the power of creation. Our souls are not brittle and hard and encased. Our souls are perfectly capable of regeneration. And while I've been speaking to you, who knows? Perhaps the fibers of your heart have gotten just infinitesimally stronger and larger and give you just the amount of strength you need to make that change that you've been trying to make for a long time. May God help us welcome in the new year with fervent celebration, and may we all see ourselves and each other as people capable of extraordinary and hopeful change. L'Shana Tova.